expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live from a lot of different places around Southern California this morning. So thrilled to be here with you on this Wednesday morning because you know what Wednesday is. Whenever possible, we have Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh with us, and guess what? She's here with us live right now. Good morning, Dr. Granpeesheh. And she's frozen all of a sudden. Okay, we're going to come back to her, but there you are. I want to remind everybody that the show is live. It's meant to be interactive. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your questions, your concerns. There are more ways than ever. Hi, Michelle. More ways than ever for you to connect with us. So let's talk about some of the, if you're watching us live, you might be watching us on YouTube, on Periscope, on Twitter, or on Facebook Live, or on our homepage, which is autism-live.com. And you can watch us on any of those platforms. Each one of them has a way that you can write into us. We're on a new platform here that allows us from those big four. We get hi Danielle. We get your comments instantaneously from those four. Hi Parker. So we're thrilled to be able to do that, which means that our old way that was the fastest is actually the slowest. If you're watching us recorded, I want to encourage you to write in your questions, hi Alicia, to autism-live.com on the chat there. But if you're live watching us, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope are infinitely quicker right now. But look at that second column that Traven is showing you. And those are all the places that we are, in addition to that first column, that we podcast. So we are a free download on iTunes, which is fabulous. And by the way, you have your choice there. Do you want to get it with picture and sound or just sound because you're taking us on a hike or in the car? So you have your choice with iTunes. And it is a free download. So subscribe, sign up to get the regular, you'll get the podcast delivered right into your inbox. And please give us a review on iTunes. We absolutely love that and helps us connect with more people around the world. We are also available on Apple Podcasts. I don't know why that's always so hard for me to say. It's like a mouth workout. Apple Podcasts. There we go. And on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Ghana. We're new on Ghana. Hi, Jeremy. And we are also now newly on Amazon Music, which check that out. That's brand new. Audible, Deezer, and a whole bunch of other places. Too many now to list on one form. But if you find that where you watch your podcasts, you look and, hey, Kayla, if we're not there, please let us know because we would like to be there. So our litmus test is if it's free to the user, we are happy to be there. And hi, Ria. We're so thrilled that you guys are here. And as I mentioned before, Dr. Grant, hi, Sanita. I feel like Romper Room. Like, you know, I can see Sanita and I can see Ria. So we're thrilled to have Dr. Granpeesheh here. She's a true expert in the field of autism. She's been working in this field for years. You would never know to look at her how many years she's been working in this field. She's the founder of CARD and the founder of Autism Care Today. And truly, I think a visionary in this field. She's been able to see around corners for multiple decades to be able to help individuals who are on the autism spectrum and the people who love them. So Dr. Granpeesheh, thank you so much for being here this morning.
It's such a pleasure, Shannon. Hi, everyone. Very nice to be here.
We're saying hello to Nasser, who's saying hi to us from India. I want to remind everybody that we're going to be live for the next hour with Dr. Doreen. She's going to be answering your questions in real time. But we want to remind you that there is no expert in any field that could answer individually specific questions in this format, right? It would be a disservice to the individuals. So what we want you to do is write in questions, be as specific as possible, and she's going to give you information which you then take back to the people who have eyes on the situation. And Tiffany is waving at us, and we're waving back at Tiffany. I love this, that we can see everybody in real time. I want to jump in with a question. Hi, Amanda. We had a couple of questions that came in before. I don't really know where to turn, but I'm at a loss for answers. My father and I both use Cpaps for sleep apnea. Me too. And lately, my 11-year-old sister has taken to destroying mine. I'm not sure what her classification on the spectrum is, but the general understanding of my family is that it's just how she is. And just now, she's coming out of her terrible twos stage. I really don't know what to do. I tried hiding it, but she managed to pick it and find it and pick it apart. She picked apart the nose cushions 5 times now. And today I came into my room and found her taking a nap on my bed with the hose stretched apart until the material tore, making it impossible to even jerry-rig a solution until I can get replacements. This is the 2nd time with the hose and now the 6th time with the nose cushions. I honestly wanted to yell at her, scream until my throat was sore because she keeps destroying the one thing that keeps me breathing at night. But I knew it would be pointless. She doesn't seem to connect us punishing her with what she did unless it happens as she does it. If I could lock my door, I would, but I'm forced to share my room with my younger brother. And frankly, he can't remember where he moved something 5 minutes ago, let alone remembering to lock the door. If he'd agreed to it. I'm just at my limit, and I know the next few days are going to be an irritable and sleep-deprived hell until I can get my replacement parts. And even after that, I don't know how to keep her from destroying it again. Can you guys please help me? Sending this sister much, much love. This is tough stuff. What do you think, Dr.?
Yeah, it really is. It breaks my heart to hear that you're struggling with this. You know, I think you need to have a sit down with your parents, and they need to hear you and help you find a closet that you can put the machine in and lock it up, because obviously they're trying to be very understanding of the fact that your sister is doing these things to the machine. But at the same time, I feel like they need to also hear you. And sometimes it's hard for parents when they're very engaged in trying to help one child. They often will unintentionally not hear the requests for help from another child. So I really think that you should go back, talk to them, and explain to them that you're at your wit's end and you really need your machine and so on, so that they can help you lock it up. Now, having said that, it could be that your sister sees that you have the machine and your parents have the machine, and she is thinking that she would like to have her own as well. In other words, I'm not sure if she understands what the CPAP machine is for, and perhaps she feels like, this is something that that you guys have, and she wants to have her own, like she just wants to be in. So that's maybe why she's using your machine. Maybe if you guys have a broken machine laying around or an old one or something, maybe you could give that to her so she could use her own and stop trying to come and use yours and accidentally destroy yours. The other alternative is just to, really find a place quickly that you can lock it up, like a closet or something, because I do think that it'll take a while and there's no telling, she might come back and destroy it again. I don't think she's doing this on purpose. You just need to know that. I think you do. and you're being very, very nice about it and very understanding about it, I think she's either trying to imitate what she sees you guys doing, which it sounds like she did, or she's also interested in the spongy part of the mask. So could be one of those things.
Yeah, and because I use a CPAP, boy, I feel it for you, because I know if I don't get to use my CPAP during the day, I'm like, a crazy person. I just can't even concentrate, right? So I feel your pain. But there are parts, like the parts you're describing that she takes apart, those are easily detachable. In fact, they encourage you to take those parts off every day and wash them. And those aren't that big, Dr. Granpeesheh. So
Yeah.
you can take the hose off, and you can take with the mask parts, and I'm sure you can find some place that's secret or can be locked or whatever. But I love that you mentioned that it's not with malice. She probably wants to be like you. It's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, the first time I saw somebody who had one was my mom, and I was like, what is all this contraption? It's kind of cool. So yeah, but please take care of yourself. And I'm sending that sister love, because it sounds like you have a lot of things as a sister that you have to put up with. So we are sending you love. I want to go to a question, because somebody had written in the question last week, and we got into a thing with the chat where I wasn't able to see it. So they say, I'm the mom from last week. My son is 5 and almost nonverbal. He recently started to imitate others. I observed him imitating when not required to. It's like he can't control himself. For example, when the therapist tries to fix her hair, he would copy her action. Should I stop him from inappropriate imitating, or should I just ignore that?
So is this the same? Unfortunately, I can't see the question, Shannon, but is this the same? There's another section that goes on, but regardless, maybe it's another part of another question. I'm not sure. But what I wanted to oh,
I'm muted.
there we go.
You couldn't hear me.
I don't have.
Sorry about that.
No worries. I'm not controlling it, as you know. So, but I'd be happy to do anything you guys want me to do if you tell me how to do it. But
you're doing great. But there is another part of the question.
Shannon, I lost you again.
Okay. Why is it muted?
Here, now you're back.
Okay. Can you still hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So there is a boy, he always sits with at school. His teacher told me he likes to copy that boy too. This makes the other boy upset with my child. If the teacher blocks my child from copying, he gets upset. So I think we have the whole picture now.
Yeah. So I think this is, imitation is a good thing, but it's not always a good thing. So we need to get it under SD control, or get it under your control. So in other words, you should start to help your child differentiate. And the way that you do that is when it's okay to imitate, or when you actually want him to imitate, then you will precede the imitation by saying, do this. And then you will allow him to imitate or say this, or whatever instruction you'd like. And the rest of the time, you don't give that instruction. And so by doing this, you're teaching the child to discriminate. And so when you don't want him to imitate, let's say the child next to him or in some other circumstance, then you physically block him from imitating, or you give him something else to do that is incompatible. So if it's an imitation that involves, let's say, his hands, then you would give him some other activity to do with his hands. If it's a vocal imitation, then you could have him sing or say his AB, something incompatible. When you do want him to imitate, then you will just give him an instruction like imitate or say this or do this or something like that. So this way you're helping him understand that under certain circumstances it's okay, under other circumstances it's not. Make sense?
Totally makes sense. We really appreciate that. Okay, we have a question about what is considered punishment. When I'm having my son practice handwriting a sentence, I erase his letters or words if it is not legible. Is that considered a form of punishment?
That's a great question. And so punishment, like reinforcement, is different for different people. So it's not necessarily defined by its topography or how it looks. It's defined by the results that it has. In other words, anything you do that results in a reduction of his behavior, any stimulus that you present and that reduces his behavior would be classified as punishing, or aversive. So it could be that erasing something is punishment for him. It could be that erasing something would be reinforcing for someone else. So that's kind of how you look at it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what you're doing. I also want to say that because I know that a lot of people kind of see anything that's titled as punishing as being a bad thing. But the truth is sometimes that you have to have consequences. That's right. And sometimes those consequences are negative. And for our kids to realize that if I write, let's say, where I'm not supposed to write, someone is going to come and erase it. It's not going to stay there. And that could be unpleasant, but nevertheless, it is a real consequence that needs to occur.
Okay, and they asked, what if the child refuses to hold a squish ball or a fidget toy when engaging in motor stereotypic movement?
Are the motor stereotypic movements hand-based or body-based? Because if they are hand-based, there are other things you could do. For instance, you could have the child put their hands in their pocket. You could have the child sit on their hands. There are other things you can do. If they're body-related, then they need to involve the whole body.
And here's where I just want to say, as a parent, sometimes we get upside down. That, we hear, if your child is, doing something, give them something, put something in their hands so that it competes with the thing. But I want to remind everybody that, and you tell us this all the time, Dr. Granpeesheh, that the behavior that they're doing for a reason. And if we don't stop, we can't leave out the step where we go, what is the reason for that? So that whatever the motor stereotypic behavior is, some of our kids flap. They don't all flap for the same reason, you guys. Some of them flap because they see colors as they're doing this. Some of them flap because the movement is a way to get their emotions. It feels good, right? There are different aspects of it. And if you try to compete with it, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Granpeesheh, if you try to just blanket do something, often what you're doing won't help with the behavior. So I see us a lot of times go, and I'll tell you where I see it the most is when parents start to learn extinction procedures and they go, I'm supposed to ignore that. And then the parents generalize that I'm supposed to ignore all behavior that my child does, not just the behavior that was trying to get attention. So giving a child something to hold on to may not solve the function. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. You're correct. But I just saw that mom's chat pop up. It's not about just offering him some options and then kind of letting it go. You have to teach that behavior. You have to teach every behavior, including the replacement behavior. So whether it's holding an object or putting his hands in his pocket, you shape that up. So someone has to be present. And if the child drops, let's say, the toy you've given him, you have to give it back to him. You have to increase the duration of time that he's holding the squoosh ball or the object that you've given him to block him from hand flapping. And you have to reward progressively longer periods of time. So you may just give him an object, he holds it for 1 second, and you cheer and reward that. But you have to continue to increase the duration of time over time. This is called shaping. It doesn't happen. It's not as easy, unfortunately, as just saying, oh, he's hand flapping, I'm going to give him an object, and from here on, he's going to stop hand flapping. So you need to teach that. And also, Shannon is absolutely right. You have to identify what exactly it is that you are replacing. Is it I'll give you guys an example. I had a child who I was treating, and one of the most difficult behaviors for him, challenging for everyone, was that he would spit. And it was very, very difficult. And we tried a lot of the normal interventions that we do with spitting. For example, we would give him chewing gum. We would have him keep increasingly reward periods of time with his mouth closed, etc. And it just wouldn't work until we realized that the reward, the reinforcer that he was getting out of spitting was actually visual. He liked to be able to see how his spit, the angle of the spit, the trajectory. So it wasn't at all having to do with the spit itself. It had to do with the visual stim. And so then we began to replace it with things like bubbles and anything that would give him that visual self-stimulation that he was seeking. So it is very important to find out the self-stimulatory aspect of the behavior, so that when you're replacing the behavior, the child gets a similar reward out of it. Because remember, everything we do in order to gain some sort of reward from. So that's the key to it, is, find out what he's getting out of the behavior.
Wonderful. And she did go on to say that it is hand and body, but only hand while sitting in a chair. She says, I've offered all of these, but sometimes he won't use any of the techniques. He says sometimes he just needs to get his wiggles out. And I'll tell you who that reminds me of is the story of Logan Shepherd. That for those of you who watch the show, there's an amazing, he's an adult now, but he's a professional drummer and has been a professional drummer since he was in his early teens. But, he was a person who did this. And you, Dr. Granpeesheh, and CARD as a whole recognized that there was a need here and turned this into something really functional. And he gave him some drumsticks, and the kid is a professional drummer. And I don't know if you've seen Dr. Granpeesheh. He has a video out right now. I'll find the link to it that it encourages people to vote, and it's him and a band that he's playing with. He's on the drums, and there's a fabulous woman singing about how now is the moment, and it's interspersed with clips of Martin Luther King and saying, "Here, make your voice be heard," and it's just to get out the vote. It does not align with any party. It's a beautiful video. But a perfect example of, I think it's so important that we don't just gloss over and go, that behavior is just in the way, let's get rid of it. I don't think that takes into consideration the individual. It's one of the reasons why I love Dr. Granpeesheh so much, because she recognizes that these are people and that they have needs. And if he's saying he's got wiggles to get out, then he needs to, right? But finding a different way. But holding a koosh ball does not get your wiggles out.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. And that's kind of why I was saying that it's, you need to pay attention to kind of all aspects of it. If it's a body related thing and if he needs to get his wiggles out, why don't you give him a period of time every day where he actually gets to play in the gym or work out? And, there's lots of different types of physical activities. Teach him dancing. There's lots of things that he can do. And by the way, they don't even have to be contingent on this behavior. You could periodically program them into his day so that, every hour he gets 5 minutes of running outside. And that kind of thing might actually help calm him down.
Okay. She just wrote in she said, I do sit with him most of the day during instructional time on Zoom, as well as play games with him on homework and all assignments. He frequently asks for wiggle breaks, so I let him. I said, let's have a dance party or arm wrestle, jumping jacks, but I can't be with him 10 hours a day. He does a little less movement when he's at home with his therapist because they mark it on their iPad. We also have a trampoline and we jump on it a few times a day in our backyard. I just want to acknowledge what a great job Mom is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Good for you. That's perfect what you're doing. So then the rest of the time, don't feel bad about blocking it. Because if he's getting plenty of opportunities, again, this goes back to discrimination. It's important for our kids to discriminate when it's okay to do a certain thing and when it's not. And so by blocking him the rest of the time, like simply telling him, depending on his functioning level, making sure that he understands that he is not allowed inside to do these wiggling things, but he is allowed to do it when he's on a break, when he's having a dance party, or when he's on the trampoline. Those are the appropriate places and times for him to do all of the movement. The rest of the time, he needs to stay still. So that is something you'll have to help him discriminate. Now, I do want to also, because I'm not there and I can't see him, make sure that we're talking about self-stimulatory behaviors that he does have control over. Because sometimes I've had parents who will come to me and they consider something to be a self-stimulatory behavior, and actually it's a tic. And then we're looking at other types of things like Tourette's or tic disorders, and that's very, very different. So as long as he has control over it, then you should teach him how to discriminate.
Wonderful. And I'm so glad this other parent wrote in, because we didn't get to her question last week. My son is 5 years old, diagnosed with level 2 on the spectrum, global developmental delay, and language disorder. He is limited verbal. When he has meltdowns, is it okay to hold him and comfort him? My husband sends him to his room. I usually will take him and hold him without speaking. Meltdowns generally occur when he is denied something he wants.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's a really great question, and we are going to get into the functions of behavior yet again. So I love that the parent mentioned that he has a meltdown when he doesn't get something that he wants. So at this point, as you need to, the right way to deal with it is to make sure that he doesn't get the thing that he just tantrumed for under any circumstances. And ideally, you would want to just ignore the meltdown. Now, it's hard to ignore a meltdown when you tell the child to go to his room, when you hold him, especially when you hold him, you're giving him a lot of attention and love and caring, which I know as parents we want to do that, but you don't really want to do that when he's having a meltdown, because honestly, it's when you're rewarding him for when he has a meltdown, you're not rewarding him with the object that he was tantruming for, but you are rewarding him nevertheless, because being held and so on is not necessarily negative to the child. So at this point, my recommendation would be to not hold him and not send him to his room. But if you can tolerate it, if you can both handle it, ignore him. Just let him have his meltdown, completely ignore him. And that is very hard to do, believe me, I know. And I know, Shannon, you've had experience with this as well. But if you can ignore him, what to expect is that the meltdown might get a little bit more intense, but then if you stick with it, it will go away. And he will learn that having a meltdown is not a good way to communicate. Now, at the same time, what I want to advise you is if there's a circumstance where he wants something, you know it ahead of time. You know that he's about to have a meltdown because he wants that object or he wants to get out of a situation, whatever it is, and you prompt him to vocalize what he wants, right? So you prompt him to have the appropriate response. I think, Shanna, did the parents say that it happens when he wants access to something?
They said when he gets denied something, yes. But I don't know what it is he's denied. Yeah.
Right. So if you can just model for him before he tantrums, if you can tell him, say, I want whatever it is, and he says it, and you can give it to him. Wherever that is possible, then do that, okay, so that he avoids the tantrum and learns that he can vocalize to receive the object wherever possible. Now, sometimes it's not possible to give him the object that he wants, in which case, if he tantrums, you need to completely ignore it. And again, this is another circumstance where you're teaching your child discrimination. It is okay to ask for something and then you will receive it. It is not okay to have a tantrum or a meltdown. In that case, you will not receive it. So yeah, it's always about teaching our kids when something is okay and when it's not.
I lost you there for just a second, but I just want to say, when we talk about ignoring, that I didn't understand when therapists were first talking to me about ignoring. But I've told the story many times before, so I'm not going to tell it again here, but it doesn't mean that you are someplace where you don't have eyes on the situation. When they did the first planned ignoring with me, I was in the room with my son, but where we have this thing where we orient to our kids. Your kid is freaking out and your kid is screaming and your kid is pulling on your pant leg. And we will turn to them and say, stop that. Don't do that. That's not ignoring. What they taught me was to busy myself with another activity so that I'm in the room with him. And there's the famous story that I tell about the fact that they made me water the plants and then dust the television and clean up some mail. And I was like, what is this, a cleaning program? Right. But it was to get my focus. I was still in the room with him. I was still making sure that he wasn't hurting himself or, property destruction, that I could, if I saw him walking over to take a planter and toss it across the room, I got there first and moved the planter. But I didn't say to him, I'm moving this so you can't throw it. I didn't make eye contact with him and say, ha, tricked you. I got here before you. All these things that I would have done. So, but what it does, what I think the explanation that was made for me, that it's like there's a light switch on me. And that when he is behaving in a way, that is appropriate and the way that we expect him to behave, the light switch is on and I'm focused on him. But when he is behaving in a way like screaming or yelling or, throwing things, or he would swipe things off of the counter, my light switch is off and I'm blocking, but I'm not giving him any of my light. My light switch is off. And that's super important to learn how to do. It does not mean you send them someplace else where you don't have eyes on them, or that you ignore everything that they say. Only if he's screaming, I'm, wiping my phone off, right? And then if he stops screaming and he says, Mom, what are you doing? I go, oh, I'm wiping my phone. And then if he starts screaming, I go back to wiping my phone and not paying attention to what he's doing. It's hard, y'all. It is hard. And be gentle with yourself if you don't get it right the first time. But it works. They learn so quickly. Oh, she's not giving me what I want for that, so I guess I'll try something else.
Yeah, that was a great description, Shannon, and that's really important because basically it's not at all about ignoring every behavior. We're not recommending that. You want to just ignore behaviors that are unacceptable to you, and you want to reward the behaviors that are appropriate. So any kind of conversation or request vocally or anything that is appropriate, you do want to interact with and engage with, and anything that is not appropriate for you or is challenging in some way or inappropriate to the moment, those are the behaviors that you want to ignore.
Yeah, and it's super hard, you guys. It goes against everything that you ever saw anybody demonstrate in terms of parenting on a TV show or in a movie or anything, because and your in-laws are going to lose their minds when you do this. Like, they're going to go, you need to say something to him. You need to, like, he needs to be talked to. You can't just let that go. And in fact, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I have to get to this question, and I know we got a bunch of live ones, but somebody had written this in ahead of time. We have to get to it. My 3-year-old is having ABA for a year now. He tends to be very inattentive in a formal table chair session and tends to stim a lot, vocal and gazing. The BCBA has advised to put a hand on his mouth to irritate him and stop him stimming. Is this the right approach? It's been used for months now and it's not working, according to mom's viewpoint. They are of the opinion that he is a difficult child to work with. I am completely confused, is what the mom said. I talk all the time, Dr. Granpeesheh, on the show about the difference between quality ABA and bad ABA. This makes me break out into hives and I want to cry for this child. What do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't put a hand on him or any child for any reason. So I don't think that's an appropriate intervention. That is not what ABA would tell you to do. What you need to be doing is identifying why he is vocal stimming and why he is gazing. And I can tell you that each of those will have a different function. And once you've identified the function, you will then try to replace it with something that fulfills that function and is more appropriate. So you don't want to do that, basically. And that's kind of where you go. I could recommend that if you would like to find out or investigate a little bit more what the function of those behaviors is, we developed a really cool test many years ago. It's called the CFA, which is the CARDS Indirect Functional Analysis or Assessment. And you can find that, I believe, on our IBT or Skills website. Shannon, where is the CFA?
The CFA is on Skills. Skills.
And if you go on the skillsforautism.com website and you look for CFA, CIA, it's a series of questions and you answer the questions and it will help you identify the function of each of those behaviors so that you can then, and it'll link you to ideas, a behavioral intervention plan for each of those behaviors.
And that takes me into my weekly announcement of what is free on CARD and on Skills and IBT. So everybody get out a pencil or a pen or your phone so that you can take down a number. I'm going to tell you what's free, and then I'm going to give you a number that you call to get free access to these trainings. This week for ABA parents, and this is directly from the folks at Skills Global IBT, for our ABA parents and guardians, we will continue to offer free IBT parent e-learning course, Parent Overcoming Challenging Behaviors. I just really want to recommend that everybody take advantage of this because it's such a great training. It's a video. You'll get free access to it. You can watch it. Your significant other can watch it. You can show it to your babysitter. You'll learn a lot and it will make things better. Parent Overcoming Challenging Behaviors. For teachers, they're continuing to offer their IBT Educator Learning Module Educator Starting to Teach, and that's available to teachers at no charge. They are continuing to offer their RBT, which is Registered Behavior Technician 2.0 training, free for parent audience on a case-by-case basis. So if you're a really motivated caregiver and you want to learn what therapists learn, the beginnings of what they learn, there's an online course that they'll give it to you for free. It's like a $440 value, but they'll only give it on a case-by-case basis. You have to let them know that you're serious business about it, because it is a 40-hour training and they don't want to give it to people who aren't going to use it. But in addition, they're continuing to offer a 10% discount on all skills products for anyone when they call the office. All you need to do is call the number I'm about to give you, say that you're an Autism Live viewer, say that Shannon sent you, ask for the friends and family discount, because that's what you are, friends and family. Ready? Here's the number, 877-975-4559. Traven, if there's any way to put that on the screen, that would be great. I'm going to say it 2 more times, 877-975-4559. 877-975-4559, and that will get you to Skills Global IBT. They have a whole bunch of things that are helpful and useful, and they're trying to offer you something free every week during COVID to help you to get through this difficult time, and we thank them for that. I am the hugest fan of Skills and IBT, so we appreciate that. Okay, I want to get back to the questions in the chat. Give me a second here. So my 10-year-old son constantly swears, and it's getting worse, swearing more, especially during transitions and high stress moments. He says they're just words and mean nothing, and that I swear it's okay. That I swear, so it's okay. So hard for me to ignore, but when others may hear him, they think it's a lack of parenting. He's very high functioning and does not yet know about his diagnosis.
Yeah, so if he's very high functioning, once again, this is an opportunity to teach discrimination. A lot of people swear in private, or even in the company of very, very close friends, but not in public. And he is 10 years old, so he has a different set of rules, I guess, than you do. So I have a number of different suggestions. One is you need to stop swearing in front of him. So for the time being, I know that's hard. Shannon's like, oh my gosh. But just for the time being. And the second thing is there's a number of things you have to do. First of all, if he's very high functioning, I think it would be important for him to see or realize, and it's up to you how you make him see this, that others disapprove of this. So in other words, other kids his age may not want to play with him, or other teachers might think poorly of him, or when others see him swearing, they will not like that. Now, you could set this, I don't know what his rewards are. Like, some kids are very interested in making other kids like them. Other kids don't really care about that. It depends on what's important to him. But there is a lesson that we do called Circle of Friends. And what you do is you basically will teach him that, it's okay if you swear in front of us. So it shows you levels of friendship, right? So it shows you family, like the smaller family unit, and then larger family, and then friends, and then acquaintances, and then so on and so forth. And you show him those concentric circles, and you give him a list of things that are okay to do or not to do for each group. So it might be okay for him to swear. It really depends on your rules, your family rules. If you think that it's okay for him to swear around you, then that'll be the only circle that it's allowed. Around other circles, it's not allowed. And this is kind of like you give him a list of other things that are allowed. But this is one of those situations where in order to teach him the discrimination, you have to reward or not reward a certain behavior, right? So if and the behavior you're trying to get rid of is swearing. So reward the absence of swearing. And what you will do that with time. So let's say right now, get a baseline and figure out how often he's swearing. Once every hour, once every 10 minutes, whatever it is, establish that on an average and start to reward longer and longer periods. Just tell him, if he's very high functioning, say, this is amazing. You haven't said a bad word in 10 minutes. I'm so proud of you. This is fantastic. If it's, give him rewards, give him a chart perhaps that shows him he'll get another reward in 10 minutes. Give him a timer on his phone. Whatever visual you need to use to help him understand that the longer he cannot swear, he will get a significant reward. And it's got to be something that's meaningful to him. And make that visual so he knows it's coming for sure. And then, as I said, if there are any environments where you allow it, then obviously there he can get away with it. But in other circumstances, he needs not to swear, and you're going to reward the absence of swearing.
Yeah. And, I, of course, I have my 2 cents here, but my 2 cents is very dysfunctional. And I'm just going to throw that out there first because, other people have hobbies. I swear, I know that, I hope that you guys don't realize this watching the show because I can compartmentalize just exactly what Dr. Granpeesheh was saying, that most of the time I'm capable of, inhibiting. I used to teach at BYU. I was a college professor at BYU. I was not a Mormon, but I was teaching there and had to sign a morals clause. I couldn't even swear in my regular life then. I'm capable of turning it on and off. But when I have my moment and I talk, I swear like a Russian sailor. And I enjoy it. It is pleasurable to say words that have percussive sounds. So, and most people, when they have children, you like to swear, you keep swearing, and then your child mimics you and you go, oh, I better stop that, right? Well, that wasn't the case with my child because my child stopped speaking. So, which made me mad, which made me swear all the more. So, and I wasn't inhibiting my response. And when we started ABA, my team had to come to me at one point and go, we have a little bit of a problem here. Because my child, he didn't have good enough diction so that people could understand what he was saying. But the more you were around him, the more they realized he is throwing some words down that are going to get him in trouble in school. That's so fine. Yeah, well, the first full sentence he said had that on his own, completely unsolicited, had the F word in it. And I, of course, was like, woo, because I know for sure we didn't DTT that. That was, he picked that up, right? And I have a sense of humor about it. I have friends that are shocked because they have never seen me be in my swearing mode. But we put limits on it and said, we only swear when we're in the car and nobody else is there, or we swear when we are home and nobody else is there. But I got to tell you, my son is 17 years old. And I think, I hear him when he plays his video games with his friends, and it is a swear festival, and it is not just him. And I said to another parent, I'm so appalled and embarrassed. And that parent said, no, that's how they're working their yayas out. Our kids are not out, doing things that can get them arrested. On the spectrum of behaviors, they got to have some way of expressing themselves. We'll just keep shoring up. You only do it when you're with these friends. And he knows when I'm with this friend doesn't swear and his mom doesn't let him swear. So I don't swear. So I agree completely with Dr. Granpeesheh. And now you can all judge me, but I do love to drop, I get compared to Beverly Goldberg all the time. Do you ever watch the Goldbergs, Dr. Granpeesheh?
Yeah.
Yes. Every show, we laugh hysterically. Beverly Goldberg, they have to bleep her on the show, and they point at me and laugh. I know you all thought that I was such a good little nun, and now you know differently. Okay, the chat continues. Let me take a look at everything that you guys have been writing here. We do have somebody who's writing in a question and wants to know your opinion about if a person with a diagnosis should be able to be suspended from school. So in your professional opinion, should a child on the autism spectrum be subject to suspension given the fact that they have been deemed by a speech therapist medically to have a deficit for not being able to effectively communicate their wants and needs? And I think if Bonnie were here, Bonnie would say, Bonnie has talked about this, Bonnie Yates, special education attorney who's a regular on Mondays, there are very specific laws about this, right? But it depends on what the child did.
Yeah. And it depends on what was done to assist and support the child. Yes. So, bottom line is, in terms of school, the school is responsible for your child's safety, but also for the safety of everyone else at school. So they are supposed to give your child enough support, both physically and with an aid and with an IEP in place and with a behavior intervention plan in place and with accommodations and modifications, so that your child doesn't end up doing something that is difficult, challenging, or dangerous to himself or to others. So bottom line, if the school did all of that right, and your child did something that could potentially be dangerous to others, then yes, I would say they have no other alternative but to suspend. However, in most cases, the school, unfortunately, either due to lack of knowledge or lack of resources, doesn't do everything that they're supposed to do to accommodate and support and help and guide and teach our kids. And so as a result, our kids tend to use challenging behaviors to communicate what they want instead of appropriate behaviers. And then they get into trouble and then they get suspended. And that is not okay because to begin with, the school didn't do what they were supposed to do to handle it and to teach your child. So it differs, right? It has to do with, did they actually do everything they could to support your child to begin with or not? And also, what was the behavior? Shannon said, it's one thing to, throw a pen. It's another thing to throw a chair. So it depends. And again, even if your child threw a chair, was it something that the school knew would happen? Did they give your child an aid for him to be able to stand right behind the child, help him? Did all those things occur? And usually the answer, unfortunately, is no. A lot of the antecedent control, the stuff that we should do ahead of the behavior, doesn't happen, and our children have meltdowns.
Yeah. I get really mad when we talk about suspensions because I don't believe in the whole suspension policy anyway, because we know a lot of times I know being an ex-classroom teacher, a lot of times kids will act out in class in order to be sent out of class.
Absolutely.
And when they get older, they act out more so that they can be sent out of school. If every time I act out, you send me home so I can sit and watch cartoons at home, I learn very quickly, I'll just do that, and then I get 10 days at home. So I have problems with all of that to begin with. But I will tell you, this mom is writing in and say they did not have behavior support, despite having 1 year prior, and then it went away, the return to the brick and mortar. So here's what I want.
Sorry, Shannon, but I want to say, oftentimes when something like that happens, we should realize that is not the right setting for your child. Right. And we need to find a different setting where they can actually manage the behavior through antecedent control.
And they can't just repeatedly send him home. You need an IEP. Yeah, you probably need a lawyer, and I'm happy to talk with you offline about where you can find all of those things. I want to get to a couple of quick questions because they're asking again. Hi, Dr. Doreen. My 10-year-old son has been taking his thumbs and tucking them into his fists. Have you ever seen anything like this? What could be the reason that he does this?
No, I haven't seen that particular behavior. But I mean, as long as it's not interfering with other activities or behaviors, I would leave it alone for now, to be honest with you. It could just be a sensory stimulation or experience that he's having. It could be a safety type of thing. A lot of times our kids do things that make them feel less anxious. I haven't seen it. I wouldn't necessarily mess with it because it's not harmful to him in any other way, unless it is, in which case you should let us know.
Yeah. Okay. And I want to get to a question about toe walking that we had from last week too. This is a twin sister of someone who has a diagnosis. She does not. She's 5, has ADHD and global developmental delay and language disorder, but not enough autism symptoms to get a diagnosis. She walks on the balls of her feet probably 70% of the time. She's very sensitive to shoes and socks. They must be and feel perfect, or she will not wear. She walks this way barefoot, socks, or with shoes.
I would recommend that you see someone else for diagnosis. I think that would be kind of important to do because those did not sound like ADHD symptoms. I'd want to make sure that you get a second opinion on diagnosis first.
Okay. All right. And then let us know how that goes. We are just about out of time, but I want to take a second we had 2 questions that came in about food. One from a 26-year-old who identifies themselves as being on the spectrum and vegetarian, and all they eat is white food, and they just never learned how to eat regular food, and they're concerned. I know you have a lot to say about that, but I also want to encourage them to watch. We've had an adult on the spectrum who's a vegan who has a cookbook out. Her name is Anita Lesko. And I would look to see the interview that we did with Anita Lesko. I think that you're going to find some great answers there. And in addition to this, we also had a question about someone trying to get their 15-year-old son to try new foods. I know that the food thing is very much something that you're very knowledgeable on, Dr. Granpeesheh, and it's a passion of yours to talk about good nutrition for folks on the spectrum. You've got a minute and a half. Anything you want to say?
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of good cookbooks out there. My daughter is actually both gluten-free and vegan, so I know that there are really good cookbooks out there. But I'm wondering if in this case, the issue is not the food, but perhaps the color or texture, which a lot of times our kids become very selective based on color and texture, which I think is a very interesting thing that happens. And what you need to do is you need to shape the behavior and reward progressively more different foods. So you might, if it's color, for instance, you might alter the color very gradually and go from, let's say, white to beige to gray foods to then darker foods or green or whatever foods. If it's texture, what we do is we begin with very, very small amounts of something that you can chew and then gradually increase that or gradually decrease that, because there's some kids who like chewable foods and others who will never chew anything and they like mushy foods. So it's a shaping procedure, and like everything else in shaping, it's gradual reinforcement of slightly altered foods so that you can eventually get to the points that you want.
Thank you. And I just want to say too, for the 26-year-old who is vegetarian, and they talk about how they can't bear to eat onions, that there's like a feeling in their mouth that they just don't, sometimes I have a very dear friend who has an allergy to onions and garlic. And when she eats them, she is not on the spectrum, but when she eats them, it starts with a tingling and then it burns.
Yeah.
And then if she eats a lot of it, her tongue swells.
Yeah.
So, don't discount that, if something physically doesn't feel well, there are people who have allergies.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, because I feel the same way, Shannon. I don't eat onions. I eat garlic, but I cannot eat onions because they actually make my stomach hurt. I get bloated from them. So I would say the same thing. If it's something that's not absolutely necessary, and if it's one item, leave it alone. I mean, there are kids who will not eat a whole array of things, in which case we have to be selective and try to teach them. But you can get allergy testing ahead of time to identify the things that they're allergic to.
There we go. We are so out of time, but Dr. Granpeesheh, I just adore you, and I appreciate taking this time with you. And I learned so much, and it's so fun to be with all these folks. I know we didn't get to all the questions and comments, you guys. I hope you see that we're doing the best that we can, but we will continue on. Tomorrow, we are back here live with the show, and we have a wonderful mom blogger. Kirsten Hunter is going to be here with us. She writes the blog Behind His Eyes. And so we've got a big show planned for you. And I'm even going to bring Anita Lesko's cookbook in, because I think it's time to change our food again, Dr. Granpeesheh. It's seasonally. We all need to change the colors and the types of food that we're eating, because everybody's writing in saying, food has gotten boring. So we're going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow too. And then don't forget, on Friday, Leah Hirschfeld is coming. You guys asked for more research about genetics and autism, and what does the world of research say about that? And she's got a whole presentation about genetics and autism on Friday during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. That's all the time that we have today, but we love you. We will see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Thank you, Dr. Granpeesheh.